It's a very warm welcome to the Global Travel Channel podcast show once again to Mr. James McAlloon. How are you, James?
Yeah, good, mate. How are you?
Did I nail your name that time?
Yeah. We practiced it before the show, so I was hoping you would.
Just for everyone watching today, I'm a little bit embarrassed because I said James's name wrong in the first episode that we did together. So, James, in front of the world today, I'm going to give you an apology. I'm sorry, mate.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
And how are you today? Are you okay?
Yeah. I'm fine. I'm going well. I mean, I'm just over halfway through my quarantine. So, it's going quite well. Just trying to not be too bored and keep myself busy.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, listen, we're going to kind of go back to the beginning because there's going to be a lot of people that are watching you for the first time because we didn't do a video show the first time round, unfortunately, and people didn't get to see how handsome you are. And
maybe they should have done it before I started walking.
Maybe so, but there's going to be a few people tuning in today too who didn't listen to your first episode, so they may not even know what you're doing. So let's go back to the beginning. You came on the show a few days before you were about to head off on your epic adventure. Some would say crazy and idiotic adventure. I say epic adventure. And what is it that you're actually doing, sir?
Yeah, so I'm walking across Australia, essentially. So I'm from the Sunshine Coast in Queensland on the coast there. Mm-hmm. And the idea was to walk pretty much from my house, which is near the beach, all the way across Australia, across the Outback to the Margaret River in Perth. Sponsored by work to help raise money for people in Peru that are struggling, specifically because of COVID and the shutdown of tourism. I think that was 6 weeks ago or thereabouts, and I've made it to South Australia, so I'm just under halfway across, but because of coronavirus and reoccurring cases in other states, they've reinstalled the quarantine measures, so I have to quarantine for 2 weeks before I'm allowed to keep going.
Okay, well listen, you dumped the whole journey on us there in the first couple of paragraphs. So I want to back up. Okay, so people are listening. So for everyone who's listening in the 90 odd countries around the world that we go to on this show, the Sunshine Coast is a location just north of Brisbane in Australia. So if you're looking at a map of Australia, go to the right hand side, which is the east coast. Go up there I think it's about just over halfway, 3/4 of the way up, you'll find the city of Brisbane, and just above that, it's about an hour and a half drive from Brisbane to the Sunshine Coast, where James started his epic adventure from. And I saw photos of him down on the beach, touching the water of the, the Tasman Sea, the Coral Sea, the Coral Sea. It's the Coral Sea you're in.
Yeah.
On the Sunshine Coast. And you're about to head west, weren't you, my son? West. Go west. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. That was it was a bit of an exciting morning, I suppose.
Tell us about it. What happened?
Yeah, well, so it's my local surf club. So a surf lifesaving club in Australia. Most beaches around Australia in towns have them. And not only do they provide the lifesaving stuff, they also run a club where they do all sorts of kid programs and member programs, and they have a restaurant and stuff like that. And most people are members of their local surf club. So that's my local one. So it was kind of nice because on the Sunshine Coast, or at least in Queensland, all the social stuff happens in the morning. It doesn't happen at night time. And I think, that's just a part of the culture and the weather. So a lot of people were down there. A lot of people that I knew that didn't necessarily know about the walk, and then I go down in my little trolley that I put down from my house, and they're like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm walking across Australia." Oh, really? And so it caused a bit of a conversation topic, and I think I planned on leaving at 7, and we ended up getting out of there at 7:30, 8 o'clock, just because people didn't know about it, and they were excited. So just got talking, so it was good. So I touched the water because I wanted to make it official. Had a coffee, had some breakfast, talked to some people, got some photos with some family and friends, and then just started walking.
James, I don't think anybody's going to be worried about the fact you left late, half an hour late. I don't think in the context of what you're doing that's going to be a major problem to anybody that you got away at 7:30.
No, not at all.
Probably a lot of people want to know what you had for breakfast, though, on the first day to gear yourself up for such an adventure. What did you have?
Oh, this is a bit of a plug, but the Alex Surf Club does an awesome recce wrap. So I just had that. It's got, bacon, egg, hash brown, all your yummy stuff. But then my boss, funny enough, came over to my house at like 6 a.m. and woke me up because he thought it'd be funny to get like the back exclusive before you go type stuff. So yeah,
nice boss coming over to wake you up, eh?
Yeah. So, it was an exciting morning. It was a bit of a new experience. I'm not used to having that much attention. So
yeah, right. And again, for those overseas watching this, I'll give you a bit of a translation. The Alex Surf Club is the Alexander Headland Surf Club in the Sunshine Coast. Yeah, and that's the plug they really wanted to have, because now people all around the world will know who they are. That's quite a famous club. They've got a lot of good Iron men and Iron women competitors from that club, haven't they, James?
Yeah, I think they were one of the first established. I think they were established nearly 100 years ago. And yeah, they've produced a lot of very Australian famous athletes. So within surf lifesaving, there's surf lifesaving competitions. And it's essentially an Australian sport, if not international sport. It's a professional, people do it professionally. And yeah, there's been a few from the Alexandria Headland Surf Club that have, especially within the same family, they've become world champions.
Yeah, right. Fantastic.
So when you walk in, you see their photos on the wall, and yeah, they give them the recognition they deserve. So.
Yeah, that's cool. And ironically, it's such a community place as well, which plays into what your whole cause is about, right? It's about community, it's about families, it's about business. So again, go back to what you said earlier in your 30-second covering of the whole project. Tell us about the charitable side of this, the philanthropic aspect, and why this part is so important for you guys to do at the moment.
Yeah, well, I suppose everybody's been affected by COVID. There's no denying that. But our Chimu Adventures works specifically in tourism operations in South America. So we're very aware of what's going on there and the effect that COVID and the shutdown of services and borders has had on the communities, and specifically the communities that rely on tourism. So think of like Cusco, for example. Cusco, 90% of the people that work there work in tourism, and now nobody's got a job. And most of those countries, they're not as comfortable as we are. They don't have, financial security. They don't have enough to feed themselves for more than a couple of days. So, we became very aware that they're really struggling. And then, and these are people we can actually directly help, because we've got the operational systems established, and they're people that we know and we care about because they're the people we work with all the time. So, so because of all of those factors, we were all discussing ways that maybe we could help and raise a bit of money or send some support. But it's quite hard because we have to look after our own situations as well. So the ideas were a bit far-fetched, or I don't know the phrase, but then I just randomly said like, maybe I could walk across the country and people donate some money. Kind of something I wanted to do, but not something I thought they'd take seriously. And then they're like, yeah, cool. Let's have a chat on Monday to talk about how we're going to do it. So they didn't even decide whether it was a yes or no. They're just like, great, all right, cool. And then there's this point that Meg, she screenshotted the camera during our conversation, and is like, that's when you realise that you're about to walk across Australia. And I'm just like, oh no. But it's been fantastic. And then from that exact point, it was just all about planning.
I've got to ask, for everybody that's sitting out there listening to you at the moment, and they're dying for me to ask you this question, were you sober at the time of making that decision to walk across Australia?
I don't think I've been sober since COVID hit. No, I'm joking. Yes, I was pretty sober. I mean, I do a lot of hiking and a lot of climbing in my spare time. That's who a lot of my personal friends are as well. So it was a huge claim to want to walk across Australia, but it wasn't an idea that was particularly new or out of my grasp. I didn't think at the time. So
yeah, cool. Now, for everybody watching, I'm going to be putting the links into the show notes today where you can jump online and support James, whether it be through financial activities, whether it be through goodwill and support, or any other ways that you come up with, because the guy's going to be on the road for a while, and you don't have to hurry up and get it done this weekend, because he's got a little bit of time before he's going to get to the end of this particular goal. Now, when you started out, how many kilometres did you have in front of you, James?
Well, I'd estimated about 4,300, but it's probably going to be more like 4,500, maybe a bit more, just because my route's changed a little bit since I started. Right.
So it's kind of been getting longer as you've been going.
Yeah, I was hoping you'd get shorter. But
Australia's growing.
Well, the thing is, though, like, you can plan as much as you want and kind of research and Google and kind of map things out, but until you get there, it's hard to know what it's really like. And so there were certain areas that, you know, when I got to a big town, I was talking to some people and they said, yeah, probably don't go down there because, you know, it's either a bit remote or it's not sealed. It's all dirt and really bad condition, whereas Google said it was good, and or maybe, you know, it's not exactly a safe area. So, or even another area is a lot more pretty and there's better, more iconic little towns along the way, and it'd just it'd be a much better and more enjoyable journey. So I kind of went the long way a little bit to get to New South Wales, and then from there it's pretty much been along the same path.
Sounds like a bit of a Sunday afternoon walk in the park, mate, the way you're presenting it.
Yeah, every Sunday for the rest of your life. Yeah, but it's but I'm almost halfway now. Like, I think I'm over 2,000 kilometres in. So
okay, fantastic. Well, I know you want to rush ahead with the story, but I'm going to keep pulling you back because there's things things that people want to know. Let's talk about that first day. You left the surf club, you left everybody behind, you're out there on the road by yourself for the first time. How did that feel?
It felt pretty good. For most of the first day, I was still in the city, and it's an upper middle class, you know, coastal city, so you just look ridiculous walking with a trolley full of outdoor gear and you've got your big hat on. And then you have to take pretty big highways to get into the country, or at least cross highways. So it wasn't hectic, but it wasn't as relaxing as I suppose the rest of the journey's been. And then a mate of mine actually joined me for the first few days. So he met me that evening, and we were able to set up camp.
Okay.
So it only took that first day, and then from that first day I was pretty much in the country. Yeah. So it changed drastically after that.
So, okay, you had a mate with you the first night. You didn't actually sleep out by yourself for the first night?
Oh, no. Well, I've got my tent and he's got like this kitted out van. It's got beds and a kitchenette and stuff. So made it a little bit more enjoyable to have a friend along for the first few days. Yeah,
okay. I wanted to get to that stage where you slept for the first time by yourself out under the stars, under the Australian outback. How was that experience for the first time?
It was pretty good. It was cold because a lot of people think that it's super hot all the time here, but when you go inland in the winter, it does get very cold. I think most of the nights it's been below zero or thereabouts. The first night though, I was in a truck stop like on the side of the highway, so you've got road noise and big like semi trucks and stuff, and it's probably not as peaceful as you would have thought, but you are just surrounded by paddocks and or fields, and there's kangaroos, and you start to see more and more animals and birds and stuff. So yeah, that's good.
So did you have a sense of kind of de-stressing and going from, you know, the metropolis of the Sunshine Coast, even though that it's not really a metropolis, but it's a busier, let's say it's a busier thoroughfare than being in the outback in Australia. So did you find yourself kind of calming down a bit once you got out of the city and stuff? Well, you're a pretty chilled out guy anyway, right?
I'm a pretty chilled out guy.
You're pretty chilled out.
I did. It took a few days, but it wasn't so much getting out of the city. It was probably the opposite of that. So getting used to just walking all day not having distractions or not talking to people and just being by yourself all day, and then camping and stuff. So it wasn't so much getting unused to the city, but getting used to, I guess, the realities of walking on the road all day.
So I know that you're an avid listener to the Global Travel Channel podcast show, but what else does one do to keep their minds, I guess, busy or silent while you're out there? Are you a guy that likes to spend a lot of time in a meditative state, or would you rather have music blaring into your ears and podcast all the time?
Probably a bit of both. You know, it's funny, my partner meditates nearly every morning, and she gets up really early before the sun's up, and I don't even wake up to her doing it, and she gets on the ground and she's meditating. She's probably going to hate me for telling this story, but I wake up maybe halfway through it and I just go, "What are you doing?" And she's like, "I'm meditating." And I'm like, "Well, I'm going back to bed because there's no way I want to do something like that." But that's pretty much what the walk is. It's a bit like if you do a really long drive and you just zone out. And it's like that every single day. So I have been listening to primarily podcasts, but only for about half the day. For things that I want to preserve the battery and things like that. But for most of it, if I'm not listening to a podcast, you're just walking. And yeah, it's pretty meditative. You just kind of get into this mindlessness that's enjoyable. And it's the closest thing I can relate it to.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
What about the sounds? I've always said that when you put yourself into a situation like that where you're out in an open space by yourself, your senses start to wake up. You start to smell things that you probably didn't smell before. You hear birds and things like you mentioned before. Has that been the case as well?
You can smell dead kangaroos. It's pretty good. No, that's probably more with my hearing. And I don't know if it's because of maybe they're waking up or maybe I'm focusing, but because there are a lot of trucks on the road, I'm always trying to be careful. And one of the best ways for that is by listening. And so after 6 weeks on the road, I can hear a car or a truck coming probably, minutes before I can even see it. Which was enlightening to me. I was like, oh my God, I've got this super hearing. It's fantastic. And then I don't know if my smell's gotten better, but this is probably gross, but you can determine how fresh the roadkill is depending on how much it smells. Because there's lots of dead birds, there's lots of dead kangaroos, the occasional fox or goat. But yeah, my hearing's the one that I really picked up on.
Right.
Which is probably a good thing because you can identify if there's going to be animals or cars or trucks, and you don't have to constantly be paying attention, like always watching out. You can just listen and know that something's going to be coming soon.
Now, for our international viewers and listeners out there today, I'm sure they're going to be interested to hear about kangaroos and koalas and snakes and stuff. So have you come across many dead snakes on the road? Or live ones off the road?
Yeah, no, not at all. It's winter, so generally most of the...
They've gone to Bali. They've gone to Bali.
They've gone on holiday. Well, no, they haven't because they're not allowed to.
They're not allowed to,
But no, in the winter here, most of the snakes and spiders, they go into like a state of sleep, not quite hibernation, but you don't really see them at all. So I thought maybe I'd see a couple on the road because that's the hottest part of the day and they're cold-blooded, so they're trying to get heat, but I haven't seen any. It's been more, I've seen emus, kangaroos, lots of eagles, lots of goats. But nothing dangerous. So,
I was going to say a lot of Australians go into that state at this time of the year as well, called hibernation, and don't come out until summertime.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised. I think because of the weird, changes in all the restrictions, a lot of the grey nomads have just gone to the western part of New South Wales and Queensland. So until I got to South Australia, they were everywhere. It's like a backpackers for over 50s. And they're all keeping to themselves and following the rules, but I would say 99% of the vehicles I've seen have been either logistic trucks or camper vans.
Right, okay. And has the traffic been very intense in terms of, are you walking along the road and you've got cars and trucks constantly going past you, or is it every couple of hours, or what's the frequency of traffic?
It just depends. It's kind of changed. So it started with it being ridiculous, and then the further west I've gotten, the less traffic there's been. So, which makes sense because you're just getting more and more remote. So
yeah. And what about the climatical conditions you've experienced so far? Has there been? I was just saying to you before we got on air today, we've just been hammered by a typical Queensland thunderstorm this afternoon. Have you had much of that, or what's it been like?
Only near the end. So for the most part, it's been dry, clear skies. At night time it gets cold, so 0 degrees or whatever, and then during the day it'll get between 10 and 20. So it's just been perfect weather. But there were two areas particularly, one between Burke and Cobar, if you look it up, which by now we're getting into the desert areas where it's not supposed to be raining, and it just rained and rained and rained, and you've got all this silty red dirt, and it just gets everywhere, and you're just sleeping in the cold wet, and it just wasn't very fun. But it was completely unexpected, and it's probably good for farmers, but that doesn't make me want to have it anymore. And then it was dry all the way to Broken Hill, and at Broken Hill you're really in the desert, so there's no way I expected, to the point where there's only tiny little bushy shrubs and then everything's just sand and dirt because it's the desert. It doesn't rain. Not to mention they've also had drought for 8 years. And then as soon as I walked into the desert, it just started raining and raining and raining, and I got really hypothermic actually. To the point that this guy pulled his van over and he looked at me and he's like, "Mate, you should probably get in the van. You don't look so good." Right. And mostly because it was windy and I was soaking wet.
Yeah.
Because some of my waterproof gear didn't work, and then when you unpack and pack up the camp, everything just gets wet anyway. It was horrendously unexpected weather where I didn't expect it.
Yeah.
But otherwise, it's been quite good.
They'll be calling you the Rain Man out the back. Yeah. They'll be probably known as the guy that's brought the rain after so many years.
Yeah. Maybe. I don't know. It's been raining here nearly every day since I got here, so maybe there's something to it. I don't know.
So let's talk about your kit as the next thing. What's been the most important item that you're carrying with you, other than your swag, obviously? But what's something else that you've got that you just couldn't live without?
Probably. I mean, you could always say the satellite phone or something like that, but realistically, probably the solar panel and battery. Just because that's pretty much the power source for everything. So my phone, all my lights, all my communication. Pretty much half the stuff I use runs off a battery bank, which then again I can charge using the solar panel. So, and it's probably more important just because it's such a long period of time. You don't think about it when you go away camping for the weekend, but what do you do when all your batteries for your lights, disappear or go out, and then you can't find anything at night time, So, yeah, that's probably the most vital piece I've had.
So what's a typical day on the road look like for you? What time do you get up in the morning? How long does it take you to pack up your stuff and get moving? And then when do you stop at the end of the day?
So I try and walk from 7 to 5. From probably 3:30, I'm looking for a campsite. And then if there's a town either before I intend to stop or a little bit after that I intend to stop, then I might push a little further or stop sooner. Just because it's nicer to be in a town. And then so I'll probably wake up around 5:30, and you just end up waking up naturally because your internal clock, because you're outside and the sun's rising. But I won't really get out of my sleeping bag until about 6:30, just because it's pretty cold.
Right.
It's nice and warm in the sleeping bag, but as soon as you get out and you're trying to pack everything up, you get really cold very quickly. So So generally, I usually have been skipping breakfast, and then I'll pack up really quickly, which is quite easy because I've packed most of it the night before, and then try and get walking by 7 o'clock at the latest, basically, which is the time the sun's coming up, and it's just a good time to get going. So that's pretty much what I stick to every single day.
Right, okay. And what about, let's talk about the nutrition, because I'm sure you're not sponsored by Weight Watchers or Light and Easy or any of those organisations for this trip. So what's the diet consist of each day at the moment?
Well, right now...
No, not now. When you're on the road.
Steak dinners. It just depends, but generally, when I leave a town, I've probably got the most variety in food. So even though I skip breakfast, I'll eat during the day stuff that doesn't need to be cooked. So say like little salamis and cheeses and biscuits or little things that you don't have to stop and prepare or cook or anything like that. And then so you're kind of grazing all day because I don't want to. It's funny as it sounds, every minute that you're stopping, it just adds like an extra 2 minutes onto the day. So I usually try and have enough that I can set it on top of the trolley and just grab it and eat it as I'm going throughout the day. Or if I need to stop for a group of trucks to go past, then I'll refill my water bottle and maybe get a little bit more food. What are those packs with nuts and sultanas and
trail packs,
the trail mix stuff. That's really good. Little bits of chocolate. Chocolate's amazing.
Chocolate is amazing, yes.
That's so good. And then so I'll do that, and that varies from day to day. Some days I'll have a lot, and some days I won't eat very much at all. And then dinner time is because I've set up tent and I've got my propane burner or butane burner or whatever, I'll cook up a huge meal. So probably it's stuff that can be cooked. So I've got like cans of stew or soup.
Yep.
And I actually make pasta with that because that'll make a really nutritious kind of pasta sauce because it's got lots of veggies in it. And just eat lots of pasta and stuff, and then or other things, mostly soups and like curries, pre-packed curries and stuff. Nothing dry, frozen or anything. Just try and make as much real food, and I'll eat as much as I can. And then if I do eat breakfast, it's usually like oats because you can cook those really quickly and just eat them, and they're quite good for you. But that's pretty much how it goes. Yeah.
So,
and after that, sorry,
I was going to ask you: is the diet significantly different to what you'd be having any day, or is it is it a brand new diet that you're having just because of this trip, basically?
Yeah, pretty much. It's I wouldn't call it a diet. It's more the things I'm eating are just based out of common sense and necessity. Yeah. Rather than eating specific things because I want certain nutrition or whatever. Yeah, obviously I need a certain amount of calories and nutrition and stuff, but there's things like how long does it take to cook because you've only got a certain amount of fuel. How long can you store it because you only want to carry a certain amount of weight. How heavy is it? Because you don't want to take heaps and heaps of heavy food, and all of those factors, but it still needs to be enough food and with enough nutrition. So I kind of just looked at what's available, and then also you're buying food along the way in these really remote towns. So just because you want something doesn't mean it's available. So it's this ever-changing calculation, right? How many biscuits can I fit in my trolley? No, but I try and follow that same thing as finding good things that last a long time, have a lot of nutrition, don't weigh very much, can store easily, and then I can graze during the day or cook it up at night time.
Do the people over in South America who are the benefactors of this amazing effort that you're doing, do they know about your progress, and are they following you and they supporting you?
I think so. What I mean is, so I saw a video recently that the local office had recorded because they're distributing all the food packages and telling them about the journey and why the food packages are available in the first place. And it's been really touching because when you walk and when you're so far away, you kind of get distanced from everything. So since I've gotten here, I've been able to reconnect and realize, it's actually making a big difference. Wow, yeah, it makes you feel like you've really helped out, even though when you're on the journey, you kind of forget that sometimes. And some of them I know personally. Some of the guides that I know because I went there last year, and I think they're all very aware, but whether or not they're sitting on Facebook following the journey, I just don't know.
Have you done anything philanthropic to this level before in your life?
No, never.
No. Okay.
I've always walked around and helped out wherever I could, but nothing to this degree. This is a whole different level.
So is there a lot of, I guess I'm trying to get into your mind to some degree, is there quite a bit of thought about that as you're walking along each day, the fact that you are doing something fantastic to help others in this world?
Honestly, no. And it sounds really bad, but what I mean is, it's not just sitting at the front of your mind and you're just thinking about it all the time. You're very aware of it. But, you're walking all day and you're dealing with day-to-day things, and you're 10, 20,000 kilometres away and you haven't spoken to anybody in 2 weeks. It's not sitting at the front of your mind like a picture. But I'm definitely well aware, constantly aware of the effect it's having. I think more specifically because, there's a lot of work behind the scenes. So if you're following me on Facebook or you follow the journey, you just see me having a great time walking in the Outback. But I don't make any of the videos. I don't do any of the logistical support. I don't buy any of the food. I don't organise the distribution of it. It's all done by the Chimu team. So there's a huge effort behind me, and I'm very aware of that. It's like I'm sitting there sad every single day as I walk. It's just an awareness.
Yeah. I wasn't trying to make it sound like an egotistical trip that you're on as far as that goes, but I guess there's you should be very proud of what you're doing as part of that team that you just mentioned at Chimu Adventures, who are doing something very philanthropic and compassionate for those people that they work alongside in a different part of the world. And we're seeing this a lot across COVID-19, across different countries, where human beings are coming together for the sake of each other. And I think that's one of the many, many positives that's coming out of this COVID-19 experience. And in some ways, you're removed from a lot of visibility on that because you're out doing what you're doing. But I can assure you that there's a lot of good things that are going on. It's not just all dark stories. So good on you for being one of those people. That's what I say. Now,
thank you.
Let's talk about the trolley. I call it a pram. I don't know.
Well, it is a pram, but that kind of can get thrown. Well, I've got a partner, so she doesn't exactly like the word pram.
So let's talk about the trolley. How's the trolley performing, and how much does it weigh when you've laden it down with all your supplies that you need every day?
It's going relatively well. We've run into a few issues, obviously, but ultimately it's holding up really well. It holds about... See, it depends on how much water I need, because I don't just fill it to the brim every time, but I think maximum about 50 kilos. 20 kilos to 25 kilos of that, it would be water if it was filled up. So yeah.
Okay, so a lot of people listening around and watching around the world today will think of Australian outback as being pretty flat and not too many mountains around. Have you had many hills to encounter going up and down?
No, not really. A couple of surprises though, because so to get from the Sunshine Coast where I started to Toowoomba, which sits on the Great Dividing Range, is about 4 days, and that's very hilly. Very, very hilly.
I think someone told you on a podcast show that you're on before you left about the Toowoomba Range or something, didn't he?
Oh, I can't remember. But yeah, I'm trying to forget that part. No, it was fantastic. I went the long way around to avoid the worst part of the hills, but there's no way to avoid the hills. So once you're there, I thought that it was going to be dead flat the entire way pretty much, and I was wrong. So it was dead flat for most of it, but there's, say, from where is it? From Cobar to Broken Hill, there's a range there it's called the Rangelands, but specifically the McDonald Range, I think it's called McCullough Range.
McCullough Range, yeah.
And the McCullough Range, and I thought it was going to be flat, and it was just huge. But it was beautiful because everything around it was flat. So you got these spectacular views, but you still had to push this 40-kilo trolley up the hill, and then try and hold it back as it's trying to race down the other side. And and then from Broken Hill to here, I expected huge hills because you're going through the Flinders Mountain Range. But the road bypasses it, and there's not really anything, really.
I'm interested, just on the trolley thing, I've done a couple of endurance things myself with equipment, and after a long time of being out there alone, you get to manage the equipment in a specific customized way. Have you kind of got that trolley under control? Have you got little quirks that you're doing with it when it's, letting it go by itself a little bit, or holding it in a special way? Have you got all that sort of stuff going on?
Yeah. I mean, you work it out eventually, how you pack it. So because you've got a lot of boxes and things, and you don't want the sides to rub against the wheels, and you want it all to fit, you learn how to pack it. So it's like a jigsaw puzzle every morning that you get good at. But then, you get really good at balancing it and where to hold it and how to push it. And it just becomes second nature, like riding a bike. Right? Yeah. You're not looking at the pedals, you're just looking in front of you. So at first it was a bit hard because you're constantly trying to adjust.
Yep.
And now it's easy. You barely have to touch it with your hands, and you've got it perfectly balanced. So it's been really good.
I bet. So what about fluid a day? How much fluid are you taking on board?
You'd be surprised. Probably 3 litres. I thought I'd have a lot more, and I planned for 4 litres of drinking and about 1 litre for cooking, but it's because it's so cool during the daytime and at night, I haven't found that I need it as much. The summer would be completely different. The summer would be an extremely difficult journey just because it's extremely hot, and then you get all these other issues. But here it's dry in the winter, except for a couple of times I didn't want it to. And it's cool. It's only 10 to 20 degrees, so you're not even sweating really.
Yeah.
And sometimes because of that, you don't feel thirsty and you forget to drink when you actually need to drink. So I would say about 3 litres I've been drinking every day, and then I use about 1 litre to 1.5 litres to cook.
And what about the hygiene and sanitation part of the trip? How are you managing that? Okay.
Oh well,
you got a couple of toilet rolls in the trolley, or what?
Yeah, well, I was trying to make a joke about how bad I smell, but I couldn't think of one. I mean, there's hygiene to a certain level, right? So you've got these little sanitation wipes, and so you can wipe yourself down every day. You've got sanitizer so you can clean your hands. A little bit of like detergent so you can wash your knives and your forks and your pots, but yeah, you wear the same clothes for 6 days and you don't take a shower between towns because you don't want to waste water. So you smell really bad when you get to a town. But you don't, because you're in the open air, you don't actually realise how bad you smell until you go to take a shower. And then it's just disgusting. But while you're on the road, you try and maintain hygiene because the last thing you want to do is get sick, right? So because there's still parasites out there. So I wipe myself down and then always make sure that I'm kind of cleaning my hands before I make food and stuff.
Is that why no one stopped to say hello to you on the whole trip so far?
Yeah, I wish that was. No. I don't think it's been that bad, but yeah.
So what do people say when they come across you and they stop and say hi and you go, I'm walking across Australia? What's the response?
It's kind of a mixture. Like some aren't surprised because I'm pushing a trolley, right? So something's got to be going on, and a lot of people travel a long way in the country, so they'll see you multiple times over multiple days. But there's parts, and because of that, some people, if they see you a few times, they'll generally stop and talk to you. And I don't think they're very surprised, especially the further west you get because you're so remote. Usually they've been very generous and like offering to give you some food or asking if you're alright, if you need more water. And one lady actually bought lamingtons for me. Well, I guess because she lived on a property, and property like. Property is what you call like a farm, but they're really big because they're in the Outback. And so this lady had seen us a few days in a row, and she'd been in town at the bakery, and she brought us these massive lamingtons, and I almost cried. It was so good. But when you get into towns and they haven't seen you, they don't know what you're walking. You have to check into motels, and they always ask you what your registration is. And there's been a couple times where they're like, "Oh, what's your rego, love?" And you're like, "Oh, I don't have a rego." What do you mean? Because you're 1,000 kilometres from anywhere. You're like, "Oh, I walked here," and they just look at you like, "Maybe I shouldn't let you stay here."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I wouldn't let you stay, and then they smell you. Then they smell you.
They have a sniff, and they're like, "Oh no, you can't." So, but when I'm on the road, it's fine.
Yeah, I bet it is. I love the Lamington story, because that lady's property that you're talking about probably took her a day to go from the house to the main road. They're so big, those properties out there, aren't they?
Yeah, they're massive, but they're so nice. I mean, country people in general are very nice, and I kind of expected that, but not to the level of hospitality that I've received.
So have you passed anybody else that's like cycling across the country or motorbiking across the country? Have you come across any other trepid adventurers?
No, which is quite surprising, because I know cycling and motorbiking is very popular. I think I saw a couple actual motorbiking groups, but nobody that's doing like riding a bike or whatever, which generally is quite common. So I wonder, maybe I was just in a really odd spot because I wasn't really on the tourist routes, or because of the whole COVID and restrictions and stuff. So, because you do get a lot of foreigners that come over and try and cycle across the Nullarbor or go across Australia. So I don't know, but I haven't really seen anybody apart from the people that actually live where they are, and I guess the grey nomads, but nobody cycling or walking or anything.
Well, I guess the international visitors are a bit hamstrung at the moment in terms of even getting into the country to do that kind of adventure. So this is a shout out to all the Australians out there. Get out there and walk across your country. Go and see the Outback.
It's only 4,000 Ks. What are you doing?
Go and say hi to James. Hey, has anybody jumped off and started walking with you? Have you had any walking buddies other than your mates in the beginning?
Well, not anybody that's randomly done it, but my boss from Sydney. So Chimu's owned by two people. One lives on the Sunshine Coast with where I live, and another one runs the office in Sydney. And he drove out with a mate all the way out to the middle of nowhere in Burke. And they walked and camped with me for a few days. But yeah, which was lovely, and heaps of fun, and a bit of a treat, because they had a car full of stuff. That was great, but other than that, no, I don't think anybody wants to walk with me. So a few people stop and say hello, but that's about it.
So let's talk about stopping, because you're now confined to a room, I guess, because of your quarantine status. And what's it been like to actually shut the motor down, the engine down of your body for a few days, and actually just be not doing what you've been doing for the last couple of months?
It's a bit of a shock. It's gotten better now. I guess the best analogy, I felt like an animal in a zoo or in a cage. If that's probably the best analogy I could think of, because I go from literally being in the middle of nowhere by myself, just wandering, and now I'm not allowed to leave my bedroom, well, my motel room, not even allowed to leave for anything apart from a COVID test. So yeah, the first few days it was weird. I wasn't stressed out, but I was almost bored, which you'd think that I would be bored walking, but I was very bored the first few days being here. And yeah, you get lazy and you kind of just want to be outside. But since then, I've tried to find things to keep me busy. Granted, a lot of that's Netflix and watching movies. But I've got some personal projects that I'm working on as well, so that I haven't been able to touch since I left. So that helps tick over the hours and stuff. And then I've had a chance to catch up with a lot of people, and my partner's grateful I can talk to her every day, but catching up with friends and family and work colleagues and people that I just haven't spoken to in weeks. So it's gotten a lot better. My biggest concern is atrophy. So not, you're using your muscles, you're walking 50 Ks a day. If I do nothing for 2 weeks, I'm not going to be able to do that. So That's probably my biggest concern. So what I'm doing, actually, I'm playing movies, and then I'm just walking back and forth across the room for hours and hours. And no joke, I didn't do it the first few days because it just got annoying. But once I started playing movies and watching movies while I did it, the last few days I've done it, and I guess I need to maintain a bit of fitness. So
can you do a live stream with me in the next couple of days? Are you walking around your motel room out there in the Outback doing that? Because I think that's hilarious, and you were telling me about that yesterday. And this is, I just want to say to everybody out there, this is the extent that this young guy's going to help these people in South America. Yeah, he's walking around a motel room. Forget about going across Australia. He's walking around a motel room, driving himself nuts, watching a movie on TV. That's fantastic stuff.
Yeah. Well, yeah. The last thing I want to do is start walking again and get hurt or be really sore or slow. And I probably will be slow and sore the first couple of days. But if I can walk the 7 steps it takes to get to the other side of the room, turn around and walk the 7 steps back and do that 1,000 times a day, then maybe I'll have half a chance. If
I was a mathematician, I'd work out how many times you'd need to do that to run a marathon. But maybe that's for the next show, yeah?
Yeah, exactly.
Now, what about the body? How's it going? Have you had any injuries so far? What about things like mosquito bites and stuff like that?
No, not really. I had really bad shin splints probably 2 weeks in. It was really painful. And you kind of just have to suck it up and work through, which isn't exactly the most fun experience. But I was able to stretch them out and massage them out, and I did that every single night. I took a day off as well, and the stretching really hurts. But it's one of those hurts where you know that it's going to be good for you. And over another week or 10 days, it got better. And then since then, I haven't had any issues whatsoever. So you get tired, but I haven't had any injuries. I haven't had any pulled muscles. Knock on wood. And then as far as mosquitoes go, no, there haven't really been any. There's been a lot of flies. A lot of flies. I may have accidentally eaten a couple because there's just so many. And you have to cover your face because they just get everywhere all over you, like thousands of them, which bothers you for the first few days, and then you just get used to it.
I don't think I could ever get used to that. I think it'd be such an... Have you got a hat with the corks bobbing along on the front or what?
No, but I think I might buy one of the nettings because the mask, it only does so much. And either you can get used to it or it's just going to drive you insane. So
I think you need one of the beekeeper capes, that go right over. Yeah.
It's like a net that goes completely around your hat.
You'll look like something from Star Wars walking across Australia, mate. You'll probably get attacked by some aliens or something.
Yeah, it'd be like, what's his name? Obi-Wan Kenobi. I'm starting to look like him.
You are, in fact, yes. What's it like looking up at that night sky when you're out there in the middle of nowhere? Is it just an amazing experience?
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's one of the things I was most looking forward to, actually. So, because you're in a very arid area, the stars are quite clear and brilliant, and even if you're not into that kind of thing, it's a bit hard to deny how good it is. So my favourite part of the day, actually, is when I stop walking, obviously. But I mean, specifically because it's like 5-6 o'clock, there's no traffic anymore. The animals are going away, so it gets really, really, really quiet. And then the sun starts setting, and in the outback, it's like a red-orange glow for maybe an hour. And then after that, these stars come out, and they're just extremely brilliant, and you can see like the mist of the Milky Way. So it's just fantastic. And you get that nearly every night. So you get a little used to it, or some nights you're just too buggered and you just go to bed. But there's a lot of nights there that you just sit up and you just watch it for hours, and you just, this is nice.
So now that you're well into the trip, has the sleeping pattern become very succinct in terms of, you're getting to sleep pretty early and, as you say, getting up pretty early to get going as well?
Yeah, I mean, the habits kind of form themselves. So I've always gotten up early because, like I said earlier, I live on the Sunshine Coast and it's part of the culture. But I go to bed pretty much after I cook dinner just because it starts to get really cold. So you can still see the stars. I'm always like poking my head out the window and stuff like that. and then so that's maybe 6:30, and then I'll read a book, or go through videos or something until maybe 10 o'clock, 9:30, and then fall asleep, and then sleep for about 7.5 or 8 hours, and wake up and pack up, like I was saying earlier. So, and that's pretty standard. So yeah, I think I've fallen in, well, not anymore, but when I was walking, I fell into a habit pretty quickly. So,
James, I reckon you're going to be inspiring a lot of people to do things outside their comfort zone as a result of watching you talking today and listening to you talking about your amazing adventure. What advice would you give to somebody out there who's now contemplating doing something epic like this? It may not be walking across the country. It might be something else that's a long-term endurance event. What's some of the things that you'd say now, looking back on your preparation and your planning and all the things that you've learned so far on the journey? What advice would you pass on?
Probably sounds cliche, but starting out for me, is by far the hardest part. Because it might be like a multitude of different reasons, but it always seems much bigger in your head, and you're always working out the details. At the end of the day, if you just start doing it, they all kind of fall into place, and you just figure out all the details as you go. So just do it. Which is Nike, #Nike. No, but it's true. I think I've found that with a lot of things in my life. I'm probably not the best. I probably don't have the best attention to detail. Probably don't think things through as well as I need to. But the reason that I've been able to do so much is just because I get in and give it a go, and then figure it out. You obviously want to use a lot of sense and figure out some things and talk to people, etc. But if you don't just jump in and do it, then you can think about it as much as you want, and it's never going to happen. Yeah,
so just go and do it is your recommendation for anybody thinking about doing a crazy long-distance endurance event like what you're doing, yeah?
Yeah, or even things that you don't think that you can do, or people might say don't do it, or you might tell yourself that. How do you know? Unless you've done it and you've failed, well, or it hasn't worked out, then you're just guessing. So yeah, just give it a go, and you'll probably be surprised. I mean, I'm surprised.
You're surprising yourself, are you, with your own? Yeah.
Well, and I find usually things are a lot bigger in your head than they are in real life, and a lot harder in your head than they are in real life. Like something like this walk, it seems huge when you think about it, but really when you're doing it, you're not thinking about how huge it is. You're just doing it day after day, and then your body gets used to it. You figure things out, you make mistakes, or you realize how you can do things better, and then it's not that big of a deal.
I think that's
I'm sorry, I'm cutting you off. That's all right. So much to say now.
Go, James, go.
Yeah. No, like I've talked to a couple of people on the phone, and they say the same thing. Oh, I can't believe you're doing something so large. And I try not to be rude, but it doesn't seem like a big deal when you're actually doing it, as opposed to how it probably appears when you're outside of when you're not doing it and you're looking at it from the outside in.
That's a great thing, though, isn't it? Because I think that's one of the things that we're all guilty of, is that we pass judgment on someone else's efforts without actually being in their shoes and understanding what it's like for them, the experience that they're actually going through. And I think that you've just articulated that really well. Other than your partner who's sitting at home supporting you, what are you missing the most about not being at home at the moment?
I'm glad you said that, because she's probably going to watch this. Probably the beach. I think I brought this up in the last podcast. I do love the water. Seeing people and stuff like that. It's probably the biggest thing, because I'm meeting new people, I'm seeing new places, all those things that everybody else is looking to do. But yeah, no, our whole life revolves around the ocean. So surfing or swimming or just having a coffee or walking, which on the Sunshine Coast, because we have Queensland's done quite well in terms of the coronavirus and how it's handled it. We don't really have that many restrictions anymore. So life is back to normal in a lot of ways, and I keep getting photos and videos of the ocean, and yeah, I haven't missed much. But the thing I'm looking forward to doing again is I guess being in the water. Right.
Okay. Good. Now, I've already signed you up for the trilogy of podcasts. When you get to the end, we're going to have another chat. But we're not setting our sights on that at the moment, because I agree with you. I think it's just about looking at day by day. But give the listeners and viewers today a little bit of an insight to as what's coming up next. When you get out of quarantine, you're in South Australia, at the bottom of Australia. Where are you going to next, and what's the goal?
Yeah, well, it's a good thing too that you mentioned that, because things, especially if you're doing a long distance thing like I'm doing, things change. And for example, when I left, all the states were opening back up, all the restrictions were being eased, and there was no problems. But since I've started, certain second waves have happened in certain areas, and now I have to quarantine here, and now certain states, it's unsure. So immediately I'll be going through South Australia, but depending on whether or not I can get into, the plan is to walk across the Nullarbor and into Western Australia, but I have to have a contingency plan. So there's a few different contingency plans I have in place depending on if I get permission to enter Western Australia or not. But for the time being, the plan is from here, go to west to Port Augusta, and then Port Augusta to Ceduna, and then from there cross the Nullarbor all the way into Western Australia. And that's probably going to be the next month to 6 weeks if everything works out.
Okay, so 6 weeks from where you are today until you get close to the WA border, West Australian border.
Yeah, I would say so. I think it's... Oh, no, maybe less. So I've got another week of quarantine, and then it takes about 25 days to get there. Okay.
Yeah. Well, we're going to be all watching and following your progress. If you need me to commence a petition of all my listeners to get you across the WA border and into the state, we're happy to send a petition to the Premier of WA to let this man in who's changing the world and helping people on the other side of the world as a result of his epic adventure. And he wouldn't, the Premier of WA probably hasn't had anybody turn up to his border before that's been walking across the country. So
yeah,
there might be a good argument to get you in there, but we'll see what happens. But
I was saying that the other day, like they've got these rules in place to protect people. So it's kind of a blanket tick the box type thing, whether or not you're essential. But I was thinking about it. I've done 2 weeks of isolation. I've passed my COVID test. I'm going to be alone for 3 weeks to get to the border. By the time I get there, I'm going to be the safest person in Australia. I was like, I am, except maybe I'll be very lonely. I don't know, but I definitely won't have COVID.
Mate, I'll tell you something else. They'll probably smell you coming before they see you.
Yeah, exactly. Just because I'm not sanitary enough.
Well, listen, James, we're going to wrap it up now, but I want to thank you very much for taking the time out of your hectic schedule in your motel room and stopping walking around the 4 walls that you're there at the moment to talk to me about your epic adventure of walking across Australia. Again, you're doing it for a fantastic cause, and you're going to be raising a lot of money as you are in activities for supporting people over there in South America. We're going to put all the links to that in the show notes today so people can support you out. And I'm going to wish you fair winds from the sailboat here, mate, and hoping that everything keeps going to plan like it is, and stay healthy and stay well out there.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thanks for having me on again, and I look forward to catching up when I'm done. That'll be good.
Absolutely. So there we go, folks. James McAlloon is on the path. He's walking his way across Australia, and we're going to be catching up with James again when he gets to the other side of the continent. There we go.
All right, see ya.